Hello, and welcome to the Round Lake Library's program series, Feed Your Mind and Body. Today, we're going to talk about vegetarian and vegan meals. Some of you may be looking toward planning your holiday meals for guests who follow a different vegetarian or vegan diet, and you might be wondering what you could prepare for them. Others may be moving towards more meatless days of the week, or maybe full vegetarian or veganism. Maybe you're already a vegetarian or vegan and just want some fresh ideas. Hopefully, we can help you with all of that. First, let's explain the different terminology for different levels of meatless diets. A vegan diet not only avoids all meats, including fish, but it avoids all animal products like eggs, honey, milk, cheese, and butter. They also avoid using a lot of products that come from animals like leather, beeswax, and other items. Vegans are not motivated by health, but by an ethical stance on not exploiting animals in any way. A plant-based diet avoids meats and animal products as well, but is all about the food and not about the other things, and it's usually motivated by dietary concerns rather than ethics. Vegan diets are identical to vegan, but they allow for honey. Some people do a vegan diet before 6 p.m. and then loosen their restrictions for the last meal of the day only. Vegetarian diets avoid meat of all kinds, but there are different levels. Lacto-vegetarians avoid meat but allow for dairy like milk, cheese, and butter, but they avoid eggs. Ovo-vegetarians avoid meat and dairy, but they allow eggs. Lacto-ovo-vegetarians avoid meat, but they allow dairy and eggs in their diets. Pescatarians avoid meat like beef, pork, and chicken, but will eat seafood. Also, there is the flexitarian, who generally follows a vegetarian diet, but sometimes they allow meats and animal products. Knowing these classifications are important if you're prepping a meal for someone else, or if you're trying to decide what's right for you. Today, we're going to focus mainly on vegan options, and if you want to switch out dairy-free items for actual dairy to make vegetarian, then feel free to do so. Last week, I interviewed our coworker Steve, who's been a vegan for 9 years and a vegetarian before that. And you can listen to that interview on our podcast to find out his specific suggestions of chefs, their books, their websites, and some recipes he loves, as well as other information about living a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle. The link to that episode will be in our comments section. Whether you're making a big formal meal or even just a snack, there are some guidelines to be aware of. In order to maintain the body's nutritional needs, there are certain foods that you need to eat frequently that contain the protein that your body needs in the absence of meat. High protein foods include beans, lentils, legumes, nuts and seeds, seitan, which is gluten, tofu, which is a soy product, and its cousins, tempeh and edamame, whole or ancient grains like quinoa, barley, and einkorn, and many green vegetables or potatoes. Another product that's important is nutritional yeast, also known as nooch. This is a flaky yeast that has a cheesy flavor without the dairy, and that makes for a fantastic flavor enhancer when you want to add a little cheesiness to your pasta, soup, roasted veggies, sauces, or anything else. It's not always cheap, but for many, it is a kitchen staple. There are some key substitutions you'll need to be familiar with when cooking or baking if you can't use dairy or eggs. Often, a nut milk or seed milk will work in place of actual milk, and there are rice milks and grains like oat milk too. Each has a different texture and flavor, so do some research before you make a direct milk substitution. When baking, applesauce is a great substitution for eggs. In place of butter, you can use coconut oil, mashed avocado, or plant-based butter. coconut milk can be turned into whipped cream, yogurt, ice cream, and other thicker dairy products. If you want a cheese alternative, you can soak and then mash up cashews into a paste consistency and use that. There are also vegan cheeses that are widely available as well. Specialty stores like Whole Foods will have lots of options, and even Aldi has vegan mozzarella and cheddar these days. Really, you can find a vegan version of most things you might need on the shelf at the stores, but if you want to make your own, small batches of things like vegan mayo instead of buying the whole container, I'm going to show you how to do that in a bit. First, I'm going to make a really tasty and fun tofu scramble. Tofu comes in different densities, from soft to extra firm, and you'll generally use the firm tofu unless you have a recipe that specifically calls for the softer kind. I'm making a tofu scramble like you would scrambled eggs, with some added veggies, so I need firm or extra firm tofu for this. Before cutting up the tofu, I need to remove it from the packaging, wrap it in paper towels or a tea towel, and set it on a pan or a plate that will hold excess moisture. Next, I'm going to use something heavy on top to squeeze all of that excess moisture out. It needs to sit for around 30 minutes to release all of that fluid. If you get impatient and don't squeeze out the liquid, it will wash out the flavor of your dish. Remember, tofu doesn't have much of its own flavor. It relies on what you add to it for flavor, and it absorbs that. If it's full of fluid still, it can't absorb anything else, and it will water your dish down as well. While the water is draining, I'm going to cut up onions and mixed peppers for my scramble. When the tofu is drained, I will crush it up into small pieces and season it with salt, pepper, and turmeric. Turmeric gives it that eggy yellow color, and it has a host of nutritional and health benefits, so I tend to put turmeric in most savory things that I cook. I'm also adding nutritional yeast for a little cheesiness. It looks like fish food, but it is so good in mashed potatoes, egg dishes, and many others. You can add your favorite unsweetened, unflavored milk for a little creaminess too. First, I'm going to saute the onions and peppers in a little bit of olive oil and whatever spices I like. Today I'm going to go with Cajun seasoning mix. When the onions and peppers soften up, I'm going to add the tofu and then some more Cajun spice. This is going to need to cook for 4 or 5 minutes. Feel free to add other vegetables towards the end like spinach, tomatoes, green onions, or whatever else you like with your eggs. I love eggs and potatoes, so sometimes I'll saute potatoes first and then the tofu scramble and then incorporate them like a hash when everything is cooked. But today I'm just going to do a straight scramble. Once everything is cooked, it's ready to plate. Add toast or nuts or vegan cheese or whatever makes you happy and enjoy. When it comes to feel-good family dishes, few things compare with homemade mac and cheese. And yes, even without dairy, you can still make delicious cheesy meals. The secret ingredient is cashews. I'm using a recipe from detoxinista.com, and I'm going to halve the recipe so I don't have to freeze tons of leftovers. Most pasta is vegan, which surprised me. I always thought noodles were typically made with eggs, but apparently not. Check the ingredients though, just to confirm. My first task is to soak the cashews in water for a couple of hours to soften them up. This allows them to blend easier. Cashews can be pricey like most nuts, so if you're using them for pretend cheese, buying them in bits and pieces is perfectly acceptable. When I'm ready to start cooking, I boil the pasta to al dente according to the package instructions. I'm using elbows, but you can use whatever short pasta you'd like. I'm partial to shells or orecchiette for mac and cheese because they hold cheesy goodness in them, but I'm using what I have today. While the pasta cooks, I drain the cashew water and put them into a blender or food processor. And then I add an acid like lemon juice or vinegar, spices like salt, pepper, garlic powder, turmeric, and whatever else you like. The recipe calls for cayenne, mustard, and chili powder, which is all good to me. It also needs some water and a good amount of nutritional yeast. Add more water if it looks too pasty. Then I drain the water from the pasta, add the cashew cheese sauce, stir it all together to combine, and season again to taste. Once it's all heated and incorporated, you can call it done, or you can put it in a greased casserole dish and bake it in the oven, or just toast the top in the broiler. If you have favorite toppings for mac and cheese like croutons or crackers or crispy fried onions, check the ingredients and add what suits your needs. Herbs and spices are welcome as well. Voila! And for anyone who has gluten issues, try it with cauliflower instead of pasta. Cauli mac and cheese is one of my favorite things on earth. Next, Sam is going to show you how to prepare a vegan holiday mainstay, which I start craving early on: cornbread.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make a vegan cornbread. Vegan cornbread really isn't that different from your traditional non-vegan cornbread. The only things we're really swapping out are the butter and the milk. In place of the milk, we're going to use almond milk, and in place of the butter, we're going to use a light olive oil. Now the recipe says you can use whatever oil you like. You could even use a vegan butter, or coconut oil, canola oil, etc. I was originally going to use canola oil, as you may see in the background photos here, but I discovered mine had gone bad, so I swapped that out for a lightly flavored olive oil that I had instead, and that worked perfectly. For the recipe, you will need 1 cup yellow cornmeal, 1 cup flour, spelled unbleached all-purpose flour works best, 1 tablespoon baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/3 cup organic sugar. You can use pure cane white sugar or brown sugar for a little more intense flavor. 1 cup unsweetened almond milk, although I accidentally used sweetened and I thought it tasted fine. 1/3 cup of your oil. I used light flavored olive oil. And then you will want to add the juice from 1 small lemon or about 1 teaspoon apple cider vinegar. And then it's time to get started. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we will mix our wet ingredients first before adding in our dry. In a medium bowl, mix together the 1 cup unsweetened almond milk, the lemon juice, which is about the juice from 1 small lemon, the sugar, which is 1/3 cup, and the oil, which is also 1/3 cup. Mix that together, stir occasionally, and set that aside for a few minutes. Then we will add in our dry ingredients. Most recipes will ask that you mix your dry ingredients together separately. That's usually so you can have your baking powder or baking soda thoroughly mixed through. What I do, because I don't like to do extra dishes, is I will add all of my dry ingredients in on top of my wet ingredients and then mix that separately before mixing it in all together. So on top of my wet mixture, I added my dry mixture, which is the 1 cup cornmeal, 1 cup flour, and 1 tablespoon baking powder, and a pinch of salt. Mix that all together and then whisk it in with the wet ingredients. Pour your batter to an 8 or 9-inch square baking pan that you have greased. Again, don't use butter if you're trying to stay vegan. You can use a canola oil or an oil spray. Pour the batter into the dish and it'll take around 20 to 25 minutes to cook. It'll be done when it's golden brown on top and a toothpick poked into the center will come out clean. I always set my timer for at least 5 to 10 minutes less, so I set mine for 20 minutes and it was almost done. You can always cook it for longer, you can't cook it for less. And it turned out beautifully. It tasted very similar to a non-vegan cornbread, and it was really simple. If you try this, I hope it goes well for you and that you enjoy.
I'm telling you, Sam makes the yummiest dishes for this program series, and I always want to make whatever she did. A big concern for people who cut meat out of their diet is getting necessary protein. And you'll hear talk about protein being special and better if they're complete proteins. This means that they have 9 essential amino acids that our body cannot make on its own, which are in meats and dairy, so we need to find and eat these from other sources to function well. Finding foods that will give you these 9 amino acids are usually fairly easy as long as you're not eating junk and processed foods. And you just need to consume these 9 amino acids throughout the day, not necessarily in each dish. So making a Buddha bowl is an opportunity to load up on all the protein that you need. What is the Buddha bowl? The origins are debatable, but it's essentially a big bowl of mixed foods that are good for you. Typically, you'll find a grain as the base, so maybe rice, quinoa, bulgur, sorghum, or anything of that sort. You'll also find another type of protein like tofu, beans, legumes, or lentils. Also, you're going to have veggies, roasted or raw, however you like. Next is greens of some sort. Often it has a dressing or spices, nuts and seeds, and maybe herbs. You can have it hot or cold, whatever you prefer. It is a complete meal all in one bowl. I'm going to make a Buddha bowl today with a Mexican influence, using quinoa, beans, shredded cabbage, homemade vegan adobo dressing, avocados, onions, radish, and cilantro. To make the quinoa, I'm going to heat up water in a pan. The ratio of quinoa to water is 1:2, so for every cup of quinoa you make, add 2 cups of water. But keep in mind, quinoa will triple in size when cooked. I add seasoning to the water as it heats, and then I toss in the quinoa and cook it on low until the water is gone or mostly gone. And then I cover it and let it steam for a few minutes. Meanwhile, I'm using canned beans, but you can soak and boil dried beans too. I'm going to take about a half a can of black beans and put them in a big bowl, and then microwave that for a minute or 2 until they're heated. I spoon in a helping of quinoa on top, then add the greens, veggies, and herbs, and I'm ready to make my adobo mayo dressing. In order to make a vegan mayo, you need non-dairy milk and an oil in a 2-to-1 ratio, a small splash of an acid like apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, some avocado, salt, pepper, onion and garlic powder, and a blender. I'm using a half a cup of almond milk to a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and I'm adding 3 tablespoons of avocado as well as cilantro and adobo to the other seasonings. I buzz it up with an immersion blender, and though it's not mayo consistency, it will work beautifully in my Buddha bowl. I drizzle the desired amount on top, mix it up, and I have a protein powerhouse in the form of a bowl of delicious mixed veggies and grains. So yummy, and you could use whatever ingredients you want. Vegetarian and vegan diets are so much easier than they used to be because products that are well labeled and widely available make it accessible. Whether you're moving towards more meatless meals or trying to find great meals to make for others who have, we hope you found information here to help you on your way. Please stop into the library and see our very large display on vegan and vegetarian cookbooks this month in the Adult Services Department, and check out our podcast episode for more information.